It's another VOD review, Riceman2002. This is Genji on Junkie Town. Maybe some Widow, I've heard. Alright, let's get into it. Let's find the team comp. More pixels. Yeah, I guess not. It's the sharpness here. Just a streaming tip. Looks like you're using either an NVENC encoder or fast preset on X.264. That's fine, but this is a little bit grainy. Right, you've got some artifacting here. On the flat textures, H.264 really doesn't do predictive that well, and so you need to kind of crank up the. You can see how on the it's sharp in some places and really blurry in others. So H.264, you're gonna want to do. So if I had to guess, I'd say you're using an NVENC encoder. If you're using an NVENC on your GTX 1070, that's a fine encoder. In terms of performance, it's definitely good, but you probably want a CPU encode. And then, regarding X.264, if you're using it, I would suggest going for a fast or medium preset. This looks like fast or very fast. Alright, let's find your team comp. Hit it here. There we go. Yeah, they've got a Doomfist now. Okay, team comp, it's 222. Alright. You know, can't go wrong with 222. That's a lie. You can very much go wrong with 222. So, Reaper, Genji, Zarya, Reinhardt, Ana, Moira. So, I mean, it's a fine team comp. There's nothing really wrong with it. There's some good synergy in here. Generally speaking, Junkertown's a map where you see less Zarya, Rein, and a lot more Diva, because spaces are a lot more open. Of course, you'd see Rein, Zarya, and most goats on this map, but this is a map where, because there's lots of wide open spaces, especially on first, and there's lots of ability to just like stand on high grounds and be very far away from people. You'll often, especially on first, see like Orisa setups, Orisa Diva setups. Just because those tanks deal with open space better, especially Diva. And then there was a whole Bastion thing on this map at some point. You still see it more often than on other maps. Genji is an interesting character. I'll see how you play Genji. There's a lot of ways to play Genji, but generally speaking, most Genji players will tell you that you're either going to be brawling or you're going to be poking as Genji. And when you're brawling, it's very much about target acquisition, about like really knowing how to snap onto your next target, knowing where they are, being able to dash to them and get a combo off on them. And then when you're poking, you are just poking. And that's how I hear Genji's play described most often by people. I'm not as much of a Genji player. So, and generally speaking, one of the hardest things to know about Genji is when to move from brawling to poking and vice versa. When do you commit onto a character? Because Genji, of course, if you commit on somebody and you don't get the kill, then you lose very often. Because, well, you need your dash to get out. Right? Yep, you use your dash there to get away from the Moira. Alright, there's been 2 fights. In the first couple fights, you really didn't do much. You kind of jumped around and poked. You never really went into the brawling phase. There's one point, I think a couple fights ago, you went into the brawling phase around here with the Ana, and you just ended up using deflect a little bit early, and you lost that duel. Let's see. So you're poking here. You kind of poke it here. One thing that's difficult to know is Genji is when you can commit resources to killing, when you can commit resources to poking, and when you need to save those resources to escape here, I think you try and deflect and bait the Reaper into shooting himself. Just take a second and consider. Is it going to do anything if Reaper hits you there? Really, no. Generally, I think you're using your deflect to kind of try and bait people into shooting themselves. And that's not always bad, but that's not the goal of deflect. It's much more effective to use deflect in order to protect yourself from damage that would kill you, or to deflect specific key abilities like Moira's Orb, which I think you do later in the VOD a lot, or to deflect like Graviton or Sleep, but generally to let yourself cross spaces safely and to escape. Okay, you're talking. That's good. I mean, so far your Genji seems to be more along the lines of poking, left-clicking a lot, and you're not really using many animation cancels or combos on Genji. So we'll spend some time on those later. I saw that, sound-based awareness. That's good. Alright, and you do get nanoed, even though I think your Ana can hear you. You do decently well. That's not... I mean, so nothing I've seen from you looks particularly flashy on Genji. And that's... You know, I'm not saying you have to be flashy on Genji, but pros play the way they do for a reason. That was a good deflect, trying to deflect the sleep. And generally, strategically, your Genji's fine. You're not ending up in horrific positions, but also a lot of this game really is your team just kind of rolling them, their team being completely uncoordinated. Like, what's the Reaper doing there? He just ulted. Like, that's not... Why would you ult there? Right? Like, this game really isn't all that good of a demonstration of what you can do and what you need to work on. Yeah, Hog probably should have killed you there. I would assume he didn't have hookup. I would hope he didn't have hookup. But, you know, especially as Genji, you're pretty squishy as Genji. It's pretty easy for Genji, especially when he goes in to try and brawl, to just die very quickly. Especially when they've got like a Doomfist. Blade. No Nana this time, but I think she has it. You haven't pushed tab in a while. Okay, and yeah, you're just gonna roll them because they haven't taken a 6v6 fight since the start of the map. All right. That's an awareness mustache. You would have hit him a little faster if you'd right-clicked there. And now you guys are trickling at this point. It's something of a skill to recognize when you've lost versus won a team fight. You'll often hear people in higher ranks calling things like, "Is the fight winnable? Is the fight winnable?" Because if the fight isn't winnable, then you want to finish it as quickly as possible when you're on attack, so that you don't stagger and you don't waste more time. So that's something to recognize. Also, a good Hanzo there, or a very, very good Hanzo there, would have been able to just tap you instantly for the headshot. Okay, you did an animation cancel there, which I haven't seen before. And you deflect Fire Strike there. And those are good things, but ultimately, you probably could have engaged on the Reaper a little better. Right, you're right-clicking here, which is good. No animation cancel on that dash. looks like you'll push it in. So generally, you're just kind of puttering around on Genji. Strategically, generally, I don't know why you're here. You probably shouldn't have gone in here. Strategically, like, you're making mistakes, but you're not. I think you're aware of your mistakes. Like, on that last death, you were just absolutely know where you should have been. It was completely boneheaded. I mean, like, that's just not something that should have happened. Cool. I don't know whether that dash commit was a good idea, because you're now somewhat behind them, and they're not 6, but your healers aren't in a great position to heal you there, so you don't get heals. And you're gonna try and push the cart. It's contested. I mean, generally, something to understand is that Genji is ridiculously more effective in a team. You're playing a solo style Genji, and it's working. You're putting down some, I don't know what that grab was. You're putting down some damage. Nice. But it's like, ultimately, Genji's much more effective if you're not having to solo kill targets, if you're able to focus people your team is focusing as well. Because I'm going to showcase some damage combos here, but it's really easy for Genji to deal like 100 damage or 120 damage. It's pretty hard for Genji to deal 200 damage. Okay, so let's talk about combos on Genji. So, just watching through your attack rounds with your Genji, what you're doing is you're left clicking a lot, which is fine, and you're trying to track and left click, and then you're trying to dash on targets, and left click, right click, and down, and that is the general idea of Genji, right? You're gonna poke, and then eventually you're gonna go in and try and get a kill, and then dash out, right? But one thing you're not doing that a lot of top Genji players, I say a lot, I mean every top Genji player will do, is animation canceling. So with Genji, the way you get the most damage out of Genji is you have to cancel your animations so that you can perform actions much quicker. Because, right, like, you can do this, you can put down a lot of damage doing this, but what if every time you did this and you melee right after? So that's an animation cancel you can do on Genji. You can cancel the right click animation with this. And actually, as I'm going to show you, you can cancel right click animation with any of Genji's other abilities. So I can right click cancel into a deflect. I can right click into a dash. Right? So you didn't see it there, but I right clicked and then dashed very quickly. So he's taken, 76 damage now. And then you can even right click your ultimate. And then you can, so part of playing Genji well is knowing all of these animation cancels and being able to weave your animations and abilities so that there's as little time between them as possible. So some of the most basic ones is before every time you use an ability, you right click directly before it. So if you're gonna dash, or you can left click with dash, right? If it's a faraway target, you can left click right into dash. And if it's a if they're medium or close range, you can right click in the dash. right? And that just does an extra 26 damage, right? Which you can never complain about. You're doing extra damage. If you're going to deflect, right-click deflect. If you're going to ult, you can right-click ult. Yeah, and then you can, and then if you're not doing any ability after it normally, you can right-click melee. And so it's higher DPS to right-click and without melee after, but because of the nature of Genji, a lot of players will right-click melee every time, so that they get, because right-click melee does, if it's all bodies, I forget, it's what, 26 per shuriken plus 30 for melee, is like 73, 78, 108 damage, which is pretty good. And so it's, you generally have to learn these combos, and I really don't see you doing very many of them. A lot of Genji players will melee a lot because they cancel everything with melee. And then there's a couple other important ones that I didn't see you doing. So that's one of them. Dashing into melee. And there's a lot of things you can do after dash. So after you dash, right, you can turn around and right-click. Depending on where you end up, you either don't turn around or you dash and then 180 and right-click. And that's one combo to put some damage on someone. Right? So you can dash and then turn around and right-click, and you cancel your right-click with something, probably melee. That one's hard though because you have to actually turn around accurately and get them on your, with your crosshair on them. One that's easier to do that a lot of people will do as well is just melee after, because you can instantly do it. Dash melee is an instant 80 damage, and it's essentially for free. And so a lot of people will just dash melee. It's a lot easier to hit your melee. And so in dive, you'll often hear about the engagement damage that people can do with a dive, and that engagement damage is best known as Winston's jump plus melee damage and Genji's dash plus melee damage, because those are the two combos you can put on someone instantly. If Genji lands a shuriken melee on the dive target plus Winston's jump damage, that's generally an instant kill on a 200 health target. So then, once you're canceling your right clicks and you're comboing something with your dashes, then the next step is with your ultimate. So the one combo that every Genji will do is slash and dash. I didn't hit it that time. But so you can slash and dash and cancel the slash animation. And that will let you get just a little bit extra, or a little bit faster slash. So if I can build ults again quickly here. Then I can show, so the slash is like 0.8, 0.6 seconds. I don't remember exactly how long it takes to reset slash. But you can kill a 200 health target much faster by slash dash slash. And then you have the added benefit where you travel through them, so it's harder for them to hit you. They have to turn around and hit you. So then, oh yeah, that's another one. Fun fact, you've probably known this, but if you hit 3 shurikens and then dash, it does 200 damage. So, it's because one shuriken is about 50 damage headshot. So, you'll see that occasionally. It's very hard to hit in actual games because actual characters' heads are much smaller. But it's it is possible to one-shot someone as Genji. And then of course you can just one-shot Tracer with a straight right-click. So then the other ultimate combo or cancel that you see less often but occasionally. So some Genjis will do is dash straight up and then ult, because during the animation where you're pulling out your blade, you're pretty vulnerable. The other way to do it is to cancel the animation of blade with wall climb. and that lets you get out of blade or into blade a little bit faster. So wall climb is another thing you can use to cancel. It's not very practical. I don't think you can actually do that, but it is possible to cancel some things with wall climb. The only other combo that I really ever use on Genji with wall climb is to cancel deflect. So let's say you're against a Zen, right? You right click him, deflect his orbs, and then you cancel it with wall climb. And you wouldn't dash right after, you'd just do another right click. But so you can cancel deflect with wall climb. And if you've kind of got it ingrained in you to be able to do these combos, right? So and that on that deflect, I could have. So if I deflect here, right? I could just dash out of it, right? And I put some damage down, but I can do more damage out of it if I'm waiting for my abilities. Right? I pop out. I cancel deflect, pop out, and then right-click dash. So that's kind of what Genji's about, in my opinion, or mechanically at least Genji's about. It's not as much hitting your shots as it is knowing the animation cancels that you can do in order to put down damage faster. As for blades, I mean, there's not much I can tell you in Goat's meta, especially. You're not really going to kill anything with blade. It's most often going to be used just to force transcendence. If you have a nano blade, then you can maybe try and get a kill with it, but you're generally just a transcendence forcing bot. Alright, let's watch the next clip for this. Yep, Widow's a good pick on Junkertown defense. You're putting together a really similar team comp. So I like D.Va better in this composition than Zarya. I think there's enough high grounds here, and there's enough open space that we kind of need to. I just think their D.Va's gonna be better here in terms of shield rotation. Oh, yep. Classic spot. It's a classic spot. Alright, so you ended up on low grounds because you couldn't take that spot. That's okay. Oh, I've got a Pharaoh, you're looking. What's the turret doing there? So I mean, generally you end up starting in a fairly bad spot as Widow there, because you missed those two grapples at the start. I would potentially avoid that by just practicing that grapple, or by going into, if you miss the first grapple, then you just take a low ground spot. So I don't think they have a Widow. You haven't shown me tab for long enough. Oh, Hanzo. Let's look at this fight. Oh wait, you showed me tab. Alright. What do you see in this tab menu? You're running 222, same comp build last time, but with a D.Va. They are running quad DPS with Lucio and Ryan. I mean, generally speaking, this is not a very productive game this ended. There's not a lot to do in this game, right? You probably could have just like sat in the back and taken pot shots and still been fine. Or you could be like trying to 360 no scope and also be fine because the game's not being played very well. So this here you see the Hanzo. You don't see anybody else. You know they've got a Pharah out there. You know there's a Torb turret out there. You're gonna try and kill the Hanzo. Yep, you actually managed to get this spot right, but you miss. I mean that's still a fine spot. I think what might have been better there is instead of sitting on that spot to just do a grapple shot like that, try and get the Hanzo with it. Doom is still on you. What's generally kind of happening to you is that since they've got quad DPS, they're able to get out and get on you with them. But you've got 222, you've actually got healer. They no longer have a healer. But, this is not a good game to send in. Where's the Widow? Find the Widow. You have to... There is an enemy Widow. You do have to watch for that. Okay, you know where the Widow is now. You have walls. You didn't even look where she was! Widow could have been up top. Right, when you've got walls, right, just take a second and look where the Widows are. Or where the enemy team is. You could shoot the turret here. Oh, that's fun. Okay, I'm not gonna watch the rest of this. So, they're on 6 DPS now, right? This is not a game from which you can get any constructive criticism. Because, first half, you were doing better than the enemy team. Like, they were not aiming as well as you. They had an inferior composition. They weren't really playing that well. And you're rolling. And then second half, they're literally 6 DPS. Right? There's nothing productive that you can gain from this match besides maybe SR. It's debatable whether that's productive. So, in the future, I'd suggest sending in games that are close losses. Right? We want to analyze games where you were playing to the best of your ability, but where you think you made mistakes. And where the enemy was trying, obviously. Again, I'm going to say scrim VODs are going to be the best thing to send in by far. I can learn more from a scrim VOD than from ranked play. And even if you've got like pug VODs, that's better. It's really hard to kind of get anything from a game like this. Like I can look at your Genji mechanics, right? I can say you're not canceling your dash with right click. But ultimately it's not really, there's not really anything that I can teach you from this game because like you're probably going to win this game no matter what you did. Generally speaking, because their team was just not that good, and that's how ranked is sometimes. So keep in mind those Genji cancels. Maybe spend some time in customs and practice range, practicing those. And other than that, just keep going.